of the Fatherhood program. We are excited to be a part of your guys' journey through this cohort that for the next 6 weeks. My name is Nick Robbins. I'm the CEO of Returning Home, and this is my friend Jim Moore, and he is blessing us with his wisdom and opportunity to kind of hear from him as we dig into fathers, what we've experienced through our fathers, and so that's really what session 1 is about. So it's this session will begin to explore how your views of masculinity and the father's role in the family is affected by your history, how you were raised. And so, Jim, just go ahead and kick us off with tell us about your upbringing, your parents.
Yeah, Nick, thank you for letting me be a part of this. I came from a really blessed family. It was a 2-parent family. My mom and dad were dedicated to the Lord, and they were dedicated to their family. Weren't perfect individuals, but really were strong in their family beliefs. Came from 2 diverse backgrounds. My mom came from a really abusive upbringing and abusive marriage before she met my dad, and so she had that ingrained to her, a lot of anxiety, things like that, but committed to the family and knew that when she started a family, she wanted it to be the very best. My dad was just a West Texas farm boy, dirt poor, probably had his own dysfunction in his family, but God really used them. They were both committed to raising a family. So my dad, I shared this with you before, but I came from very blessed stock in the fact that from the time I started playing sports, football, basketball, baseball, in the 2nd grade all the way till I graduated high school, my dad only missed 1 game.
Yeah.
And he was a blue-collar worker, wasn't white-collar executive, but, he just made time for his kids. Same thing for my sister. Anything she was involved in, he wanted to be there. So that really helped develop me. I just grew up thinking that's what dads do.
Yeah.
I didn't know really the outside world and all the dysfunction in fathers around the nation and around the world, but I was very blessed to have that kind of family deeply ingrained into my soul and into my spirit, to where that's just what I wanted to carry into my relationship with Liz and our kids going forward.
Yeah. And so how old are you, Jim?
67.
67. And the perfect thing between Jim and I'm 41, so we come from different generations, and that's great, because then we'll be talking about the younger generation, which would be our children, and as well as your children. So I think this is a perfect setup. So a little bit about my family. So we grew up in basically a farm town. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and so she was the one that's rooting for you at all the games and running the kids around. And my dad worked a lot, and so we just didn't see him a whole lot. He'd leave early in the morning and be gone till late at night, and then on the weekends it was kind of like, hey, don't bother Dad, he's tired. So that was kind of how I was raised until I was 15, and then I was out of the house at that age. So Jim, tell me about how your father played a role in your parenting today.
My dad was a solid disciplinarian, not overbearing. He had, he was patient with me. He had to be patient with me, but he taught me what it was like to love, and not just to say that I love you, but to show it by his actions. I remember when my mom was in the process of passing away. She was in a coma for about 4 days, and I was there at night with them while the 4 days she was in that status. And I remember on a Friday night around midnight, I'm looking at my dad, and I see him tired. His partner of 51 years is about to go home to be with the Lord. And I just looked at him and I said, "Dad, you're my hero." And without blinking, without even thinking about it, he just said, "Well, I'm just doing what I said I would do 51 years ago."
Yeah.
And that stuck with me, because he not only modeled manhood and masculinity, but he modeled what it was like to be a dedicated, loving, committed father to his wife.
Yeah.
And so whether it was discipline or love or teaching or instruction or just, most of all, modeling it out, he taught good, but he taught good mostly by how he lived his life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I would say, not that this was reality, but this was my belief of my childhood. And I think many of us, that are taking these classes can have that. Like, we have a vision of what our parents should have done or how things should have been. And because I was, asked to move out of my home at 15 when I, was parenting the boys, we really pressed upon them, hey, there's nothing that you can do to make me love you less. There's nothing you can do for me to push you away. Like, I accept you right where you're at.
Yeah.
And it was very much the opposite. It was, if you're going through something and you're unwilling to share that with me, that hurts me, that you don't trust me enough to walk through the muck with you.
Yeah.
And so having that mentality, we just had, a very open home and conversations, and I was very blessed as a dad to have two boys that they're pretty easy compared to me. Like, I was a terrorist. And I just think of me and my brother and like all that we put our parents through, like drug use and arrests and all this stuff, and like the worst thing that my kids were doing were just getting bad grades.
Yeah.
And it was just the one of them. The other one just
Yeah.
got good grades. Like, so that's the extent of it. I was like, I did things different, but in the way I look at it now is I didn't understand, my parents' role.
Yeah.
Like, I was just at a football game for my nephew on Saturday morning, and my dad was, sitting with me, and we're watching, his grandson and my nephew play football in Branson, and we've had so many special opportunities and moments now that I'm an adult, to where it's really shifted what I truly now believe, was back then. And so that has changed, over time. So let's get into, let's go ahead and pause it here for you guys. So we kind of covered slide 1, and then once you have your discussion, kind of talk about, your guys' upbringing. And this, we're going to go a little more in depth because this is session 1, but this is an opportunity for you guys in a small cohort to be willing to be transparent and to know that anything you share stays in that room. And the more open you are, the more we can learn from our past and learn from our brothers and the other dads in the room. So take a moment to do that, and then we'll get back on slide 9. So we are back, Jim and I, for slide 9. We're going to talk about the roles in a home between the mom and dad. So, Jim, for you growing up, were there very defined roles for your mom and your dad, like responsibilities in the house or outside the house or finances, or what'd that look like?
Yeah, I had one sister, and so both my parents worked, and so we knew, excuse me, going home, that after school, my sister knew that her job, taught by my mom, instructed by my mom, was to focus on the house. My grandmother taught my sister how to cook at a young age so she could help out if mom came in and was tired. Dad, blue-collar worker, would go to work at 7, get home at 5 or 6, and yet he knew that when he crossed the threshold of that door, that his work was at work, and he left it there. And I never really remember my dad bringing his work pressures home to us as a family. And so when he got home, we spent time together. We ate every meal around the table together for years, until my sister got married and moved off. I mean, it was literally, it was the family table time where we did talk and we did discuss. And then my dad would, teach me on the weekends the things about mowing and yard work and that kind of responsibility. And so, there were definitely defined roles between mom and dad, to where we knew each other and what our roles were going to be and what our responsibilities were going to be. And we just kind of grew up with that. It just was, again, kind of the normalcy of our family of what we were doing.
Yeah, that's good. Growing up, again, my dad worked, so my mom was staying at home. And so there was extreme defined roles. you would never see one doing the other. I don't know if my dad knows how to do the laundry. And so, so growing up, it was funny because for us, so I've got 3 siblings. There's three boys and 1 girl. And so growing up, every Saturday morning when you would wake up, there would be a list with your name on it. And you could not go outside to play with your friends until you got those chores done.
Wow.
And so it was my mom instilling in us that like we had to be bringing something to the table. Like we had to be responsible. It wasn't her job to clean up after us. It was our job in our household to get these things done. And what's so you guys, as you're doing your chores and getting them checked off every day, you can blame my mom because it's definitely her fault. But I do appreciate how cleanly the properties are, and that's the funny thing is there's so many people that walk into either the Springdale location or the Huntsville location. First thing he says is, "It smells like cleaner in here."
Yeah.
And I always think is like, yeah, because that's how mom wanted it. And so with my dad, it was watching over the finances and working, and so it was extremely defined. And I would say, with Kelly and I, we didn't do that, not intentionally. I am the only one that cleans in my house, but no one said that that's how it's gonna be. But she definitely appreciates my mom in what she's instilled in me. Because Kelly, she thinks things magically get cleaned up. I don't understand it. But so our roles are changed, and I would say for the dads that are probably in their early 20s that are in these cohorts, you guys would even experience a different level of the roles are so intertwined today, because I know very few families that can just have one parent working anymore.
Right.
And so another thing I think of is, so I had a mentor, Gary Smalley, and one of the things he told me early on in our relationship was, he says, protect the bedroom, Nick. Don't talk about the kids or your marriage when you're in bed. He's like, that's just a safe space where you can relax and where you can be intimate, and don't let the world cloud that. And I was like, man, that is so great. And then I immediately walked into our house that was 1 bedroom with a loft and 1 other room. And I'm like, well, Gary, where can I talk to my wife?
Yeah.
Like what do we talk? And I just think things are different today.
Right.
Like there's no safe space when we were in our first home together. It was so tiny. We were just all on top of each other, all 4 of us. And so I would say kind of like how it was envisioned in maybe my parents, like how they did things, it just wouldn't work today.
Yeah.
And so when we're going through these sessions, like we want to be very aware of, hey, we have our experiences, but we understand that you guys have your experiences that are very different.
Sure.
So let's take an opportunity to pause again. Jump back with us once you get to slide 14, and enjoy the discussion of kind of what those roles look like and how they're defined as you were raised, and then how they're defined today in your current situation. All right, we are back on slide 14. So this is the last slide we're going to go through, and this is a really important one. So as you guys know, 24/7 Dads is the program that we're going through, or it could also be called Fatherhood Fire. And it's based on 5 traits. And so we're going to talk about the traits, and everything is really intertwined into these traits as Jim and I are going to work through these sessions together. It's about qualities and practices of a devoted and nurturing father. And so the first one we're going to discuss is self-awareness. And so I got some different ones we can touch on, but there was 2 I wanted to really ask you about, Jim. The first one is to be a self-aware dad, to be a nurturing dad, to be a devoted dad. I need to be able to identify my emotions, and I need to be responsible for my behavior. And when I think of my behavior, I think of it's really what I do with my emotions, right?
Right.
So when you think of identifying your emotions as a man, like what's that look like?
One of my favorite sayings is most people aim at nothing and hit it with great accuracy. And so when I look back at my father, and one of the things that he I don't think he taught this by his words, but just kind of instinctively put into me my role as a man and to think it through, and for me to really contemplate on what type of man that I wanted to become. And he never let my emotions get out of check or get out of balance. And when my mouth, which I had a really, I was just a smart aleck, I was just a witty, smart mouth, sarcastic kid. And I remember one time, we were playing my best friend, who was at the same time my arch enemy in all the sports. Everybody's got that kind of guy, and we beat him in baseball. And I never will forget, we were pulling through like a quick stop or some sort of gas station after the game to get something to eat. And I rolled down my window and I said something like, "Hey, we really beat you and I enjoyed it,
Yeah.
And my dad got me home and goes, "Dude, that doesn't happen in the Morehouse."
Yeah.
And made me get on the phone and call my arch enemy / best friend and his parents, and made me apologize to my buddy, to his dad, and to his mom.
Yeah.
And that taught me that there's got to be some disciplines in my emotions as a man. And so, my dad had a temper. He was born on the farm and raised a farm and fought, and their motto was, "We'll fight first and we'll talk about it later."
Yeah.
And so, he brought that kind of with me, but yet at the same time, he really looked at his past and how he was brought up and said, "No, I'm not going to carry that one into this future." So he really wanted me to talk about self-awareness, self-discipline. Think about what you're going to say. Plan about what you're going to say. Think about your actions. Are they going to have consequences? And don't call me when you're in the principal's office, because it'll be bad.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. It's a funny story about my oldest son, Alex. I think he was probably like 11, 12. And I said, he was throwing a fit about something. And I was like, "Man, you're the most emotional person I've ever met." And he's like, What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Anger is an emotion." He goes, "I'm so emotional." And so it's like, for men, because as you're going through our classes in the Return Hero program, you're taught that anger is a secondary emotion. It's there's an emotion that triggered the anger, and for men, we have like accepted anger as like an okay thing. It doesn't seem weak, or it doesn't seem emotional.
Yeah.
But it is. And the quicker we can identify our emotions, the easier we can get control of it, the better we can communicate it. Like, how often are we having a conversation with the mother of our children, or our wife, or our girlfriend, or whomever, or even my roommate, and say like, "Hey, when you said this, it made me feel this way." Like, how quick can you get past that emotion, if it's sadness, if it's, feeling betrayed, whatever it is, when you voice it? And if you have healthy people in your circle and you have voice, "Hey, this made me feel this way," the first thing they're going to do is go, "I'm so sorry you're feeling that way." Because they love you and they care about you. But if you don't communicate it and you just respond to it, then we're not being self-aware of that, and so we can't grow in that area.
Kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, guys, we appreciate you letting us join you for session 1. We're excited to be a small part of this big journey for you dads as you pursue the hearts of your children. And I know there's a lot for many of you that are standing in the way of that connection, but this is a great start, is to be able to jump in these classes and learn and grow, so that when the Lord opens up that opportunity in your life to be able to connect with your kid, that you're prepared and you're ready to make the impact that is necessary for the success of your children's lives. So we are going to wrap up and then jump into our next session.